My name is Isati, which means to mend, to sew, and to heal. Although I was captured by the slavers at the place they now call Guinea, the true name of my home is Mamo. I am the Futa Fula Fulani and the people of Songay. My family are weavers, seamsters, and seamstresses to the royal families of Songay. There was no fabric that could not be spun. There was no silk that could not be woven. And it was widely recognized by all that I was born with the gift of knitting and stitching. By the time I was 14, I was well on my way to becoming #1 seamstress in my village. Indeed, it was believed that God himself guided my hand. Before my capture, I was being prepared to oversee the creation of most all the apparel worn at every coronation or festive occasion, for I was the daughter of Matumbe, the chief needleworker. My days were spent learning, reading the text of the ancients and studying the rich and glorious history of my people. School was filled with stories of conquest and intrigue. I loved the oral tradition of our griot, Malibu. He could change the atmosphere with his voice. The young of the village would sit for hours and listen to story after story, tale after tale. It was our task to remember, then retell the tales to our family and friends. The day of my capture will never be forgotten. It was 7 days in front of my 18th reign. As it was custom, I was gathering flora for my coronation. It was to be a grand affair. Most all of my village would be bedecked in the finest raiment, all prepared by my family. By the year 1670, my village had been trading with the Dutch, Portuguese, Spanish, and French for more than 200 years. I had heard stories of kidnappings, but because of my status, believed no such ill fortune would befall me. I, along with 2 cousins, ventured west into a garden filled with marigold, as it was the color of my raiment and the flowers which lined my apprentice mantle. One moment I was bending and gathering, the next I was surrounded by 20 or more tall men from a tribe I did not know. They threw a sack of burlap over me. I was knocked to the ground and lay there for a long, long time. When I was jostled awake, there were other men who placed chains and manacles on perhaps 15 of us, some of whom were from my village. We marched for 3 sunrises, and each day there were more of us. When we came upon the shore, there were perhaps 20 or more white men, whom I believe had been released from hell itself. The rabble had long hair, blue-white eyes, and they smelled like wet goats. They laid the lash upon the backs of those who moved slowly with whips made of bull hide. While shouting words that none of us could understand, they screamed and spit like madmen. We were thrown into canoes and shipped out to the Man-Eater. Man-Eater is the name that was given to the big boats that swallowed my people and ate them while alive. Before this journey was over, I wished 100 times that the legend was true, as death would have been a more pleasant outcome than the fate that had befallen me. I have no way of conveying how much time was spent in the belly of the Man-Eater. I don't have words in English to explain the miserable state of the wretched souls that were thrown atop each other like mackerel from a fisherman's net. If not for the fierceness of my pride, all human dignity would have been stripped from me, as it was stripped from so many poor souls. There are no words that properly explain the expression on one's face and how the light of life leaves one's eyes while they're yet alive just before they leap to certain death in the raging sea. There are no words that convert the sound of weeping and wailing. There is no translation for the moaning and anguish delivered through the Ketonine tales. There are no words for the stench of urine, feces, and fear that mingled and rose from the hold of the good ship Beaver. After sailing perhaps 2 fortnights, there is no way of knowing exactly. We are transferred from the Beaver to the Pearl. I remember seeing one of my countrymen slip on the plank. His neck snapped like a green bean. He tumbled to his death and drifted off with the tide. I recall my thinking was that he might be better off than the surviving lot of us. On the Pearl, I was thrown in the hole beside several sacks of cayenne carter red pepper. There were two who lay beside me whose bodies reacted to the pepper in a manner that caused their bodies to swell. Their eyes bulged and hives broke out all over their skin. They moaned and groaned as their bodies bloated and swollen to almost bursting. The black pilot of the ship, who was not the captain I would later learn, was the cause of me being removed from beside the pepper. I must say that, had he not provided intervention, I would have died from my fits of sneezing and coughing. We arrived at New Amsterdam in the high heat of summer. There was such a bustling ruckus and busyness banding about that confusion seemed to be the order of the day, and there were as many black milling about as white. I was taken to a tavern where I was washed by some black women who spoke only Dutch, Portuguese, and a dialect of Mindi that I could not understand. They fed me, washed me, cleaned my hair, and put a dress on me that was so heavy it felt like walking with bushels upon my shoulders. After 2 sunrises, I was placed in a horse carriage with 2 children, a girl around 10 years of age and a boy around 8, along with another wench, as we were called. It was a day's ride from the dock to Hudson Bay to the sprawling green estate at Phillips Manor. The strangeness of the dwelling confounded me, for I had never seen anything similar. We approached during the night, and the lanterns in the 2 large windows made it appear to be a huge monster with yellow eyes, with smoke billowing from 2 chimneys that looked like ears on either side. It was as terrifying as a slave ship. We were taken to a small wooden hut, one of perhaps 10 lined along the south side of the estate. There we were given food, water, and blankets. On the very next sunrise, we were all, more than 30 or so, including little Shola and Olumide, forced to stand in a line as the Mrs. Margaret Phillips, an overseer named Master Henry, and 2 house slaves inspected us. The missus appeared to have no lips, just a cruel line where her mouth should be, and the meanest set of eyes I'd ever seen on a human. After inspecting us all, she came back to me, and the line where her mouth should be softened a little. She beckoned me from the line and instructed both Shola and Olumide to accompany her to the manor. It was there made clear that I was to see after the children. After the children, I worked from can't see to can't see. I emptied the slop buckets. I scrubbed and cleaned the linen, the walls, the doors, the soot from the fireplace and the soot from the kiln. I washed the windows, the dishes, the pots, and the pans. I swatted the carpets, swept and mopped the floors, scraped the wax from the candle holders, mended the curtains, dusted the furniture, and fed the dogs. I slopped the hogs and fed the chickens. I milked the cows and cleaned the troughs. I polished the silver and the guns. I washed the clothes, darned the socks, sewed the sweaters and the coats. When I expect I worked 18 to 20 hours a day, I worked till my back, my knees, and my hands pained me to tears. There were 2 occasions where I saw the boatman named Thimble who had rescued me from the death of the red pepper. Once, while I was braiding Shola's hair, he entered the rear of the mansion, never seeing me. And once, when Olumide and I were at the wharf collecting perch and codfish, he never saw me. I was a slave on the estate for 12 moons before he spotted me carrying a bushel of pears on the dock at Schuyler's Hook, where our eyes locked. My heart forgot to beat for a time. From that day forward, every day that he was landside, I would see him. One late evening before Sabbath, as there was no work the next day, he heard me singing a song from my homeland. I was again braiding Shola's hair while singing in my native Pula and Fula. He came close to the porch and smiled while I sang. He did something which caused my heart to almost leap like a white-tailed deer. He spoke to me in both Pula and Fula. I had not heard the language of my people spoken so beautifully in more than a year's time. His words had hope and promise in them. When he finished speaking and I continued singing, it was his voice which made the music.